फातिहा। सलवात।
अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मुहम्मद व आले मुहम्मद।
जब शाम से मक्तल में असीर सितम आए, जब शाम से मक्तल में असीर सितम आए, सर पीटते हाथों से वो पाबंदे गम आए, और जिंदा से रिहा हो के नबी के हरम आए। और ज़ैनब का ये नौहा था फिर इस बन में हम आए, और ज़ैनब का ये नौहा था फिर इस बन में हम आए। मिलने को बहन आई है फर्जंदे नबी से, अरे कर दो खबर आने की हुसैन इब्ने अली से, कर दो खबर आने की हुसैन इब्ने अली से। और किस्मत मुझे रोने के लिए फिर यहाँ लाई, तकदीर ने है वही मंजिल है दिखाई। और जिस बन में लुटी फातिमा ज़हरा की कमाई, क्या वजह जो लेने को मुझे आए ना भाई, अरे क्या वजह जो मुझे लेने को आए ना भाई। अरे लाजिम है कि इस शर्म से गड़ जाऊं ज़मीन में, अरे भाई नहीं आएंगे तो उतरूंगी नहीं, अरे भाई नहीं आएंगे तो उतरूंगी नहीं मैं। अरे आबिद ने ये की अर्ज के ए ज़ैनब ज़ीजा, कुछ दूर नहीं मरकदे फर्जंदे यदुल्ला, अरे जाना है ज़ियारत को अज़ादारों के हम, इस वक्त तुम महमिल से उतर आइए वल्ला, अरे इस वक्त तुम महमिल से उतर आइए वल्ला। हज़रत ही के हमराह है सब अहले हराम, अरे जाएंगी नगर आप तो आएंगे ना हम, अरे जाएंगी नगर आप तो जाएंगे ना हम। तुम तो शहवाला की आज़ादार हो ज़ैनब, इस काफ़िले की काफ़िला सालार हो ज़ैनब, आफत में मुसीबत में गिरफ्तार हो ज़ैनब। हाँ जोश गमे शाह से लाचार हो ज़ैनब, हाँ जोश गमे शाह से लाचार हो ज़ैनब। इस वक्त शिकायत ना करो सिब्ते नबी की, अरे हमराह तो है रूह हुसैन इब्ने अली की, अरे हमराह तो है रूह हुसैन इब्ने अली की सुन के ये भतीजे का सुखन ज़ैनब नाचा महमिल से उतर कर हुई चलने पे तैयार हमराह हुए सब शहे वाला के आज़ाद और आँखों में रवां अश्क थे लपे थी ये गुफ्ता आँखों में रवां अश्क थे लपे थी ये गुफ्ता अरे नजर शहदा दागे जिगर लाए भाई हजरत की जियारत को बहन आई है भाई हजरत की जियारत को बहन आई है भाई जब शाम से मक्तल में असीर हरम आए।
Just a quick reminder, Julus-e Arba'in at Diwan is going to be tomorrow. At Diwan tomorrow is going to be at noon from 12:30 to 3:30. A bus is arranged for the Julus that's going to depart from IEC at noon. Anybody who is interested to take the bus is kindly requested to be here by 11:45 a.m. And now with your loud salawat, I request Sayyid Bilal Rizvi to the member.
Them to scoot up.
Can I also request all the kids who please come forward? There's a lot of room up here, right here. Thank you so
much. رحم الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والصلاة والسلام على إمام القبلتين ونبي الهرمين وأفضل الثقلين وجد الحسن والحسين الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد. وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الصادقين والذين ذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد يكون الله في كتابه الكريم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فاسألوا أهل الذكر إن كنتم لا تعلمون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the love of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam and for the hastening of the reappearance of the master of our time, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The discussion pertaining the contributions of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq to the scientific world is a discussion which carries great relevance within today's 21st century society. For when one examines the state of the world, he'll see the state of the world is such that whether you believe in religion or you do not believe in religion, the world respects those peoples that can contribute to the intellectual sciences. The world respects those individuals who can contribute towards the natural sciences. And you find that there is no greater individual to quench this thirst in the world today than Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, salamullahi alayhi. You see that fruit of knowledge which Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam had sowed. The more time went on, the more that fruit it became ripened. You know, I remember George Jordak, who wrote Imam Ali, Sawtul Adalat al-Insaniya, that Imam Ali, the voice of human justice, he would say, there's one thing which I don't understand. I don't understand why Ali was sent before his time. That why does he make this statement? He makes this statement in the sense that a man who knew the realities of creation, a man who knew the realities of the system of the world, a man who would sit upon the mimbar and say, Saluni, Saluni, qabla an tafqiduni. Ask me before you lose me, for I know the paths of the heavens better than the path of the earth. When this man who is ready to explain the realities, they say towards this man that how much beard, how much hair is within my beard? To which the Imam replies by saying that even if I give you an answer, who will count it? And then the Imam says to that man, but what I will tell you, for each hair there is a shaitan. For that child within your house will be the killer of my child Hussein. That was the father of Umar bin Sa'ad. So you find this is that reality, that the world in the time period of Ahlul Bayt, many of the pieces of knowledge which Ahlul Bayt gave, they didn't understand it then. But the more time goes on, you find there will be a greater understanding of these narrations. Of course, time will never catch up to Imam as-Sadiq. But you find the more it goes on, the more the people, they will begin to understand the reality of these narrations. For example, Amir al-Mu'mineen would say in the end of times, people would be in the east and they would be in the west. But when they are in the east and the west, they would speak to each other and they would see each other. Back then, they didn't understand this concept. But today, when we open up our phone, we can open up a video chat from across the world where people, they are speaking towards each other. And these are the pieces of the ulum of Ali Muhammad which are available within the narrations. This is why the 8th Imam would say that if the people knew the beauty of our narrations, they would undoubtedly follow us. The 5th Imam would continue. One day the 5th Imam is going, he points towards his house. He says there is no knowledge except that it comes from this house, pointing towards his own home. And this is that reality. But you find that there is a bitter truth towards this. The bitter truth is that justice has not been done towards the knowledge of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And let me give you a practical example. That wherever you have a textbook and there is a chapter in a textbook on a particular subject, you find a portion of that chapter is dedicated towards those individuals who contributed towards that science. For example, have you ever taken a course on DNA without the names of Watson and Crick being mentioned? Have you ever had a course about gases and the property of gases without Robert Boyle being mentioned? Have you ever had a discussion about motion and physics without the mention of Isaac Newton? Now let me ask you a question. How many times have you seen the name of Imam as-Sadiq in a textbook? And this is a reality, that the world has mentioned the students of the Imam, but they have neglected the teacher. You look at an individual like Jabir bin Hayyan. Jabir bin Hayyan, he discovers crystallization and distillation and evaporation. The world called Jabir the father of modern chemistry, but never did they write the line that whatever knowledge I have gained, it is from my master Ja'far as-Sadiq. that this is that reality which has been neglected about Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And the next logical question is that how do we overcome this gap which has been created? Number one, we do it through discussion, through working in academics, through writing, through speaking. But before we go and outreach anywhere, number one, we have to understand ourselves what were the contributions of the Imam. That what position does the Imam have within the world today? And to do this, number one, we have to look at the contributions of Imam as-Sadiq himself. We have to look at the contribution of his direct students, and we have to look at the contributions of his indirect students as well. Those ulama of Ahlul Bayt who followed the footsteps of Imam as-Sadiq. That you know an individual like Nasiruddin Tusi, that if I asked you in this hall that did you know there is a crater on the moon called Tusi crater, how many people would say that they know this fact, that there was a crater upon the moon named after Nasiruddin Tusi? But you find these are those individuals following in the footsteps of Ahlul Bayt, that not only did Nasiruddin Tusi contribute within the natural sciences, but the religious sciences as well. Both were combined. You know, I remember Nasiruddin Tusi, he would explain the mizan on the Day of Judgment. You know, we've always heard that on the Day of Judgment there will be a scale. And those actions which were good, they would be heavy upon the scale. And those actions which were not as good, they would be very light on the scale, or they'd be on the other side. Nasiruddin Tusi gives an example. He says when you have a ship in the ocean, the ship can go left and right. But the moment you throw the anchor down and you weigh it down, you find the ship, it becomes steady. He says in the same way, those actions which keep us steady upon Iman and they build certainty within us, they will be heavy upon the scale. Whereas those actions which are temporary, they are light. That's why they won't have an impact upon the person. They would be a negative impact towards it. And you find those actions which build certainty in us. Amongst those actions is learning about the ulum of Ali Muhammad and making our faith stronger in that. You know, when they said to the 8th Imam, that how do we know the position of you Imams of Ali Muhammad? The 8th Imam, Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida, salamullahi alayhi. The Imam, he said there are two things. Number one, look at the dua of the Imam. For the dua of the Imam is not rejected. And number two, look at the knowledge of the Imam. For the knowledge of the Imam is higher than the rest of the creation. And this is why tonight, I'll examine the scientific legacy of Imam as-Sadiq in order, number one, that we can build a type of unity amongst those who are around us by mentioning the teachings of the Imam. Number two, so we can understand the importance of the Imam in the modern world and his scientific contributions in the modern world. And number three, so we can gain ma'rifat of that Imam whom we call ourselves Ja'fari after that Imam. You know, the reality is that we are Muhammadi, we are Alawi, we are Hassani, we are Hussaini, we are Fatimi. But when our school of thought was called Ja'fari, in that time period you find the Khulafa after Rasulullah, they banned the writing of hadith. The writing of hadith was not permitted. It was until the time period of Umar bin Abdul Aziz, the Umayyad Caliph, that he did three things which were commendable. Number one, what he did was what? He returned fadak back towards Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Number two, he stopped the cursing of Amir al-Mu'mineen from the pulpits. And number three, he allowed the traditions of Rasulullah to be written down. You find when the traditions, they were there, people, they would discuss what is a tradition, what is not a tradition. How do we understand these narrations? In that time period, there was an Imam who was Sadiq and truthful, who would show what was right from wrong. You find one day, Imam as-Sadiq is on the mimbar. He is saying that Rasulullah was of this height, his hair was like this, his eyes were like this, he was of this build. They say, oh Ja'far ibn Muhammad, you've never seen Rasulullah. How are you giving such an answer? The Imam replied by saying, he was the Sadiq Prophet, the truthful Prophet. I am the Sadiq Imam, the truthful Imam. And in that time period, when the schools of thought were being established, you find the Imam had a firm position, and it took place in a number of subjects. And we'll analyze this topic in a number of stages. Number one, In what ways was the university of Imam as-Sadiq like no other university within the world? Number two, what were the contributions of Imam as-Sadiq in medicine? And what theory of the Imam is being used today as a future diagnosis tool for diseases? Number three, what theory of Aristotle did the Imam disprove at the age of 12, and what were his contributions in chemistry? You find number four, what were the contributions of Imam as-Sadiq in astronomy that it wasn't discovered later until they were sent towards the moon? And number five, what were the contributions of Imam as-Sadiq in physics that when they wrote a PhD thesis in Strasbourg, France, they said that these discoveries of Imam Jafar as-Sadiq were the greatest scientific discoveries in the history of the world. And based upon these points, we'll begin to understand the methodology of the Imam and the contributions of the Imam. Now, number one, when it comes towards the Imam as-Sadiq's academy and Imam as-Sadiq teaching other individuals, you find Imam as-Sadiq followed the Islamic method of science. The Islamic method of science is that you study the creation to understand the creator, that there is no contradiction between religion and science, that the creation are a way to reaching the creator. That's why have mercy upon the creation as well. You know, one time Nabi Musa, he's walking past a desert. He sees a man praying in the desert and supplicating, and tears are coming from his eyes. Nabi Musa, he speaks to that man. He says, "Oh man, what are you doing?" He replies by saying that I had committed a sin. I am asking forgiveness for my sin. Then he says, "Oh man, I've never seen anyone in 40 years over here. Who are you?" He replies by saying, "I am Musa." He says, "Musa Kalimullah, the one whom Allah spoke to?" He says, "Yes, I am that Musa Kalimullah, and Allah sent me over here." He says, "Oh Musa, you are able to speak to Allah. Ask Allah if my sins have been forgiven." Musa, he speaks to Allah. He says, "Oh Allah, had the sins of this man been forgiven?" Allah says his sins haven't been forgiven. That Allah, Arhamur Rahimin, the mercy of the merciful, the most merciful of the merciful, that Allah says his sins weren't forgiven. Nabi Musa, he says, why haven't they been forgiven? He says that for 40 years he has been praying at this spot. I've arranged for his rizq and his sustenance in such a way that a bird comes and delivers food towards him. Never in 40 years that bird was delivering him food that he himself cared whether the bird had food itself. Because of this lack of mercy, I haven't forgiven him. You find Nabi Musa, he tells the man what Allah said. The man, he replies by saying, "Oh Musa, tell Allah that if he is going to throw me in the fire of hell, make my wujud and my existence so big that nobody else can fit within the fire of hell." At that moment, it was revealed to Musa, "Oh Musa, this man has been forgiven." Musa, he says, "Oh Allah, why has he been forgiven?" Allah says for 40 years he didn't even care about the one who was giving him sustenance. Now his thought is in such a way that he cares about all of humanity. Because of his mercy for the creation, he has been forgiven. See, this is the reality of Islam when it comes to the creation of Allah. Have mercy to reach the Creator, understand them to reach the Creator. And this is why when they wrote that PhD thesis about the contributions of Imam as-Sadiq, they said that Ja'far ibn Muhammad is the first person in his university to combine religious teachings with scientific teachings. Because you look at the state of the world at that time. Within the Catholic world, there was a separation of religion and science. Within the Baptist world, there was separation of religion and science, that they had universities, they had academies. But in those academies, they would only teach Christian law, otherwise known as canon law. But when Imam as-Sadiq came, he would teach subjects from jurisprudence to the tafsir of the Quran, to physics, to astronomy, to chemistry. You know, I think I've given this example before, but it's important to understand the Imam. You know, when you go to a university website, you go towards one subject, you'll see that there is not one professor that teaches that area. There are multiple professors. For example, if you take the area of law, you'll have multiple professors. Why? Because because one person cannot specialize in every subject. There will be an expert in immigration law. There will be an expert in domestic law. There will be an expert in corporate law. There will be an expert in business law. But look at the University of Imam as-Sadiq. One man was on the mimbar, 4,000 would sit in front of him. And every subject from biology to chemistry to physics to jurisprudence were taught by Imam as-Sadiq. And the Imam, he would teach his students to specialize in an area. For example, a man comes from Syria. He comes to Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq. He says, "Oh Ja'far ibn Muhammad, I want to debate with you about the fatha, dhamma and kasra within the Quran. About these marks, the harakat, vowels within the Quran. I want to debate with you about them." He says, "Go and debate one of my companions. If you can beat him, then come towards me." That the Imam wanted to show the position of his companions. He says, "Go and debate Hamran. If you can defeat Hamran, then come and debate me." You find he doesn't defeat Hamran. Then he says, "Oh Ja'far ibn Muhammad, I want to debate with you about Arabic grammar." He says, "Go to Aban bin Taghlib, then come towards me." He says, "I want to debate with you about jurisprudence." He says, "Go to Zurara bin Ayun, then come towards me." He says, "I want to debate about speculative theology." He says, "Go to Mu'min at-Tagh, then come towards me." He says, "I want to debate with you about morality." He says, "Go to Hamza bin Tayyar, then come towards me." He says, "I want to debate with you about Tawheed and the oneness of God." He says, "Go to Hisham bin Salim, then go towards me." He says, "I want to debate with you about wilayat and imamat." He says, "Go to Hisham ibn al-Hakam. If you can beat Hisham ibn al-Hakam, then come towards me." The man, he looks at Imam as-Sadiq after he lost all of those debates. He says, "Now I understand. You wanted to show me what the position of your companions are." You see, what the Imam showed is that each of those companions had a specialization. And when they discussed within their field of speciality. Many of the problems we see in society is when people, they go out of their specialization and they speak about topics when they don't have knowledge about the subjects. Imam as-Sadiq within his university, he's going to show that I am teaching every subject, but you specialize in a particular subject. You find the University of Imam as-Sadiq, it continues. You find Imam as-Sadiq, he gave research methods which were 1200 years ahead of their time. You know, Descartes is an individual who lived in the 1600s. Descartes is called the father of modern research. Why is Descartes called the father of modern research? Descartes would say that if you want to study the whole, you study the part to understand the whole. That if you are a medical doctor and you want to study the body is too complex to study it fully. So first you start with one system of the body, one part of the body, then you study the entire body. You find 1200 years before Descartes, Imam as-Sadiq was the first individual to put experimenting in towards theories. That when there was a theory, Imam would encourage people to experiment. And the exact example he would give, because he's giving knowledge, but he has to speak at the level of the people. تَقَلَّمَ النَّاسَ عَلَى قَدْرِ عُقُولِهِمْ. Imam as-Sadiq would say to them that if you want to study the properties of the entire ocean, don't study the entire ocean. Understand one drop of the ocean. The moment you understand one drop of the ocean, then you can go towards the rest of the ocean. You find Imam as-Sadiq, he's highlighting the same concept what Descartes gave in the 1600, but he's giving this concept nearly 900 years before this individual. This is the contribution of the Imam. You find this is that unique university, but you find there were subjects in this university that were not taught anywhere within the Arabian world. For example, Imam as-Sadiq and Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, salamullahi alayhim. They were the first individuals in all of Arabia to openly begin teaching medicine. You know, within the Arabian Peninsula, the Arabs were the only civilization who did not make any advancements within medicine. You know, next to the Arabs in that time period, there were the Sassanids. The Sassanids, they had a king by the name of Khusro Parvez. Before him was Anushirvan. The Sassanids, they established a university. Anushirvan, he established the Jundi Shapur University. Over there, they would teach medicine. But on the Arabian Peninsula, you find there was no established system of medicine. You know, you've heard the famous narration that a doctor comes to Amir al-Mu'mineen from out of town. He says to the Imam, why are there no sick people within this town? The Imam says, it's because I've given them the prescription that when you eat when you are extremely hungry. But when you leave the table, leave when you are slightly hungry. The doctor, he said to Amir al-Mu'mineen that you're right, I'm going to leave this town for I won't have any patients within the town. You know, you've heard the narration. But what I want to allude you towards the narration is that this doctor, he came out of town. He wasn't from Arabia. There was this void within the Arab world. But Imam al-Baqir and Imam al-Sadiq are the first who began to teach medicine. You know, one of their medical teachings, in that time period, there was no heart monitor and pulse monitor and all of those, you know, million wires that we see over there today. That it was hard to tell sometimes if a person was alive or dead, if their heart rate slowed. So they came to Imam al-Sadiq. They said to the Imam, how can we know whether a person is alive or whether a person is dead? The Imam says, simple. Put a cut upon his body, particularly between the two fingers. If blood gushes out, he is alive. If it doesn't gush out, he is dead. Why? Because you find blood, it circulates. When blood is circulating and you put a cut upon the body, you find blood will begin to gush out. You know, there's an incident that Harun al-Rashid's cousin, he falls ill. At that point, his court doctor, his name was Jibra'il. And there was another doctor who was a competitor with him. His name was Ibn Bala al-Hindi. So Jibra'il, the court doctor of Harun al-Rashid, said, your cousin is dead. He's going to die. Ibn Bala al-Hindi replied by saying no, that his cousin will not die. He says that if he ends up passing away, I will divorce my wife 3 times, I will give away all of my slaves, and I'll give away all of my wealth. You find news comes that this cousin of Harun al-Rashid, he passed away according to them. Ibn Bala al-Hindi, he says, no, there's no way, let me see the body. When he goes to the body, he says, I was thinking what to do because now Harun al-Rashid was telling me you made this promise that you would give all of it away. Ibn Bala al-Hindi says, at that moment I remembered what Ja'far as-Sadiq taught me. I went, I put a cut upon his body. The moment I put a cut upon his body, blood began to gush out. Then they realized that this individual is alive. This is the reality of the ulum of the Imam, the ulum and the knowledge of the Imam. You know, one time an atheist by the name of Abu Shakir, he comes towards the Imam. The Imam, he wanted to prove the existence of God towards him. He proves the existence of God through the means of medicine towards him. He says that within your body, your blood, it circulates. The moment blood, it stops circulating, you know an individual is dead. He says in the same way, there are creations of Allah who live in your body and their job is to fight those that come from outside of your body. You know, today modern science, it established that within the GI tract, there are commensal bacteria. The role of this bacteria is what? It is to fight pathogens which come from outside the body. Sometimes when you take medicine and your stomach becomes upset, it's because you destroyed some of that bacteria. You know, there's a GI doctor in the back, he's smiling and nodding his head towards me that he's enjoying this. But this is the reality of the ulum of the Imam within this subject. You find the Imam continues, and there's one theory of the Imam which is particularly fascinating. The Imam, he would say, sometime you are able to detect diseases through the rays that come out of a person's body. You know, this wasn't a reference to airborne illness. I remember I read a book. His name was Dr. William Campbell. And the title of the book was Tomorrow's Medicines Today, the Future of Medicine. Dr. William Campbell, he says within that book, he says that instead of having invasive test after invasive test to see if a person has an illness, the future of medicine may be that a person is able to detect the photons which come out of the body. When there are certain types of cancers and illnesses such as jaundice, the body will emit more photons. Because of this, they will be able to detect that an individual is ill. You find Imam as-Sadiq, he highlights the concepts of these rays coming outside of the body. You know, as you read that PhD thesis, which they wrote in Strasbourg, France, oftentimes they debate with themselves that where did this man get his knowledge from? At one point they said he got it from the Library of Alexander. But I say the Library of Alexander was burned 60 years before Jesus, because Julius Caesar, he burnt that library. Then they said he got it from the Greeks when the Greeks were there. But I say no, the Greek texts were translated into Arabic much later after Imam as-Sadiq. Then they said what? They said he got it from the Jundi Shahpur University within Sassanid Iran. But there is no historical evidence to show that Imam went towards Iran. And number two, in the Jundi Shahpur University, they didn't have textbooks, they would teach medicine orally. No, one point came within this thesis. They said it remains a possibility that Ja'far as-Sadiq had divine knowledge. That what is the reality of the Imam? You know, the Imam himself would say that if Musa and Khidr were sitting in front of me, I would be teaching both Musa and Khidr. Why? Because Musa was the champion of sociology. He had the knowledge of the Shariat. Khidr had the knowledge of the metaphysical. But when you want to combine the knowledge of the physical and the metaphysical, then you come towards the doorsteps of Ali Muhammad. Then you come to the doorsteps of Ali Muhammad. You find these were the contributions of the Imam in the realms of medicine. You find continuing, the Imam didn't just have one or two areas where he was an expert. This is that individual who was called Insan al-Kamil, that perfect individual. You know, when you come to the area of chemistry in the Imam as-Sadiq, at the age of 12, he disproved a theory of Aristotle which was around for 1,000 years. And which theory was that? It was that theory where Aristotle would say that the world, it had four elements: earth, fire, air, and water. Imam as-Sadiq would reply by saying that I am surprised that an individual like Aristotle would say this, because earth itself has multiple elements and each of the metals within the earth is an element. You know, it was 1950 that they discovered that these metals are elements. Imam as-Sadiq, he is disproving Aristotle at the age of 12, that you don't look at age when it comes to the reality of imamat, you look at their designation by Allah. Because if Isa can speak from the cradle, then why can these imams not have that ilm when they are children? You find further than that, the imam, he would say that the air itself is a mixture. The air isn't everything alone, and everything within the air is needed for a person to survive. You know, it was only in 1700 that they realized that air itself had multiple elements. Within the 1700s, they separated oxygen from air in a combustion reaction. But after that, they began to think that you only needed oxygen to survive. You know, I don't know if you've seen pure oxygen, but if you take pure oxygen and you put a match in front of pure oxygen, the match will go up in flames. In the same way, if there was pure oxygen coming into our bodies, you'll find our bodies would become to be oxidized and they would begin to break down. Imam as-Sadiq was saying roughly 1400 years ago that every element within the air is necessary for the survival of a human being. And these were facts which were just discovered within the 1900s. You find that Imam, he would continue in chemistry. He would speak in chemistry farther. He would say that within the body of a human being, there are 4 things which are at a large amount. There are 8 things which are at a smaller amount. There are 8 things which are at a very minute amount. You know, it was a scientist later by the name of Jean-Paul Maret who started tissue analysis. When he started tissue analysis, he realized that there are different factors, there are different elements within the body. Imam as-Sadiq said 4 large, 8 smaller, 8 minute. Today we know that the 4 large portions of the body are carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen. We know less than that. There are elements such as phosphorus and potassium and chlorine and sulfur within the body as well, 8 smaller. Then after that we have minute trace elements. This was that theory that within this PhD thesis, when I mentioned that they said it remains a possibility Jafar as-Sadiq had divine knowledge, it was based upon this theory. That imagine, you have a PhD thesis. When you have a PhD thesis, you're using academic language. When I'm writing my works, I wouldn't write in the same way that I'm speaking from the mimbar in front of the followers of Ahlul Bayt, because you have to use academic language. But within that academic language, they're saying that it remains a possibility. This individual has divine knowledge. You find this was the Imam in the area of chemistry. But you find the Imam, he continues, subject after subject. Then you come towards the area of what? The area of astronomy. You know, astronomy is one of the most difficult subjects to study without technological advancements. That if you don't have the proper tools, how do you study astronomy properly? You find Imam as-Sadiq. He would make theories of astronomy at the age of 13, which were 1,000 years old, he would disprove them. For example, in that time period, they believed that the sun was not at the center. The earth was at the center and the sun would revolve around the earth. This theory was the theory of Ptolemy, that king who established the Library of Alexandria. You find Imam as-Sadiq, he would look at those people. They would say to Imam as-Sadiq that there is days and there are seasons. The Imam would say, why are there days and why are there seasons? They would say it's because the sun, it revolves around the earth one time for a day, then it revolves once a year to have seasons. The Imam, he looks at him. He says, how is this possible? That the sun is revolving around the earth once and in a year. That this is something which is not logical. Then the Imam, he continues. He says, the reality is that the earth is at the center of the universe. And why the earth has day and night is because it rotates upon its axis. That this is what the Imam was saying. You know, the fact that the Imam recognized that it was the rotation of the earth that causes day and night is something which is particularly fascinating, because this is something which Galileo didn't discover with the telescope. This is something which Copernicus didn't discover. This is something Kepler, who discovered that the orbit is an elliptical shape, didn't discover. This was something that was discovered after NASA began to send probes into space. Imam as-Sadiq, he is explaining the realities of this creation. You know, the Quran, it says, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge about that which you do not know. Who are these Ahl al-Dhikr? You know, the Quran, it also says that we were born without knowledge. There must be a group that the moment they are born, they are rasikhuna fil ilm. That you look at Amir al-Mu'mineen when he was born inside of the Kaaba. When Amir al-Mu'mineen is born inside of the Kaaba, 3 days pass by, the eyes of Amir al-Mu'mineen, they don't open. Rasulullah comes to Fatima bint Asad. He says to Fatima bint Asad that let me see the child. Fatima bint Asad says, Ya Rasulullah, everything is good about this child. When I was in the Kaaba, there was light from his face illuminating the inside of the Kaaba. But there is one thing, Ya Rasulullah. It's been 3 days, this child hasn't opened his eyes. Rasulullah, he takes Amir al-Mu'mineen. Amir al-Mu'mineen opens his eyes in the arms of Rasulullah. Rasulullah says, Oh Ali, in the way you made your sights makhsus for me, in the way you specified your sights for me, oh Ali, I have specified my knowledge for you, Ya Ali. That Rasulullah specified his knowledge for the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. Then the narration says that Rasulullah, he puts his tongue in the mouth of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Amir al-Mu'mineen, and the way Jesus spoke from the cradle. Amir al-Mu'mineen, after he was born, he says, Ya Rasulullah, if you tell me to recite the Bible, I will recite the Bible. If you tell me to recite the Torah, I will recite the Torah. If you tell me to recite the Zabur, I'll recite the Zabur. If you tell me to recite the Quran, I'll recite the Quran. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he recites Surah al-Mu'minun. You know, you think, why Surah al-Mu'minun? Amir al-Mu'mineen knows Fatiha is the first surah, but at the end of the day, the one reciting is Amir al-Mu'mineen. That the one reciting is Amir al-Mu'mineen. And you find Imam as-Sadiq is the inheritor of the mimbar of Saluni. That mimbar where questions were answered. That mimbar where certainty was spread and doubt was eliminated. And you find this Imam, through his scientific teachings, amongst many of his teachings, he would do this task. You know, another theory of the Imam in astronomy is that the Imam, he would say that the universe, it increases and decreases. we understand that the universe increasing, but how does the universe decrease? It was only in 1950 they discovered the concept called a black hole. That what causes a black hole is when a star, it collapses. When a star, it collapses, you find that matter, it contracts. When the matter contracts, you find the universe has contraction. The Imam is saying that the universe has expansion and contraction. This is the knowledge of the Imam. No, the Imam then he continues. He says that there are stars which have more light than this sun which you see. In that time period, they would see the sun in front of them. It was the closest star. They would think it is the biggest star. But Imam Sadiq would say that there are stars which are much bigger than the sun. Today, 40 years ago, they discovered a star called a quasar. A star which is called a quasar is that star who is 10 billion times bigger than the sun, a quadrillion times bigger than the sun. Imam Sadiq, he's showing that not all stars are of the same type, not all stars are of the same size. But Rasulullah has a narration. He shows there are a set of 14 stars which are equal. He would say, my Ahlul Bayt, their example is like the stars. The moment one of them sets, another of them rises. There's a continuing chain within them. Even within this time period of occultation, you find that star, that source of the light of guidance, that Imam, he benefits us. In the way the sun benefits us behind the clouds, the nur of hidayat of the Imam, it comes to us in this time period of occultation. And there are scholars. There are scholars who have had interactions with this Imam. There was an individual by the name of Muqaddas al-Ardbili, famous scholar within history. Muqaddas al-Ardbili, he's going from the town of Ardbil towards Karbala. As he's going from Ardbil towards Karbala, you find that he borrows a horse or a camel to go towards there. The person, he gives him permission to take it. When he is going towards Karbala, a man, he comes up. He says, "O Muqaddas al-Ardbili, can you deliver this letter towards Karbala?" Muqaddas al-Ardbili, he thinks that this man has given me permission to ride upon the horse, but he didn't give me permission to carry the letter as well. That look at the thought of the social justice of Muqaddas al-Ardbili. So he gets off of the horse. He holds the letter. He begins walking to Karbala with the horse next to him. That on his feet he's walking. As he's going towards Karbala, a man upon his horse, he sees Muqaddas al-Ardbili. He says, "Oh man, do you want to get upon my horse?" Muqaddas al-Ardbili, he gets upon the horse of the man. Then he says to him, "Oh man," the man says to Muqaddas, "Where are you from?" He says, "I'm from Ardbil." He says, "Do you know this person in Ardbil?" Muqaddas al-Ardbili says he was a good person. Then he says, "Do you know this person?" He says he was a good person. Then that man, he says, "Do you know Sheikh Ahmad?" Muqaddas al-Ardbili, his name was Ahmad. He says, "Do you know Sheikh Ahmad?" Muqaddas al-Ardbili, he says that this individual, he's not that good. He is fighting with his nafs. That man, he turns around. He says, "Oh Muqaddas al-Ardbili, if Sheikh Ahmad wasn't a good person, he wouldn't be sitting on the horse with the Imam of his time." The Muqaddas al-Ardbili was called Muqaddas by the Imam of the time. You see, these stars are those that benefit within all time periods. And you find this Imam, he's highlighting these concepts of science. But you find in the same way, these are those individuals who would give hidayat and guidance towards the heart. And there is one more area which I'll analyze of the contributions of the Imam. And this is that area where they were particularly fascinated when they wrote that PhD thesis. The Imam would say that everything besides Allah has a dual form. They're always discovering that what is the future of energy, that when oil is not there, what is the future of energy? One of the theories they came forth is the theory of matter and antimatter. That what's the difference between matter and antimatter? Matter and antimatter, it may have the same mass, but if in matter the protons are positive and the electrons are negative, in antimatter you find it's the reverse. That if you take some antimatter and matter and you collide it together, you find you'll have a reaction where energy is created. Imam Sadiq gives something very interesting. He would say that everything besides Allah has a dual form which can collide with each other. The look at the vision of the Imam. But no, there was this next theory. And the final theory before I come towards Musibah. This was that theory which those individuals in France, they said this was the greatest scientific discovery. You know, I see many of you, you have glasses upon your eyes. If I told you that this theory and concept for glasses was provided by Imam as-Sadiq, what would you say towards me? You know, in that time period, they would believe that the rays would come from the eyes and then you would see the object. Imam as-Sadiq would say this does not make any logical sense. Why? Because when there is darkness, then you should still be able to see the object. If the rays are coming from your eyes and there is darkness, you should be able to see the object. Imam as-Sadiq would say there are two possibilities. Either the object has light itself or it reflects the light of something else. Then the Imam, he would say something very fascinating. He would say when there is a camel in the distance, because the Imam is speaking for them at the level of them. He says when there is a camel in the distance, the reason it looks small to you is because a small amount of the rays are coming in towards the eyes. But if you can get an object to put the rays together, then you would be able to see more clearly. This concept was used by Galileo in 1610 when he discovered the telescope. You find the telescope was a discovery which revitalized Europe, that the Renaissance was in Europe, that Italy was in excitement about the telescope. You find the concept of it was provided by Imam Jafar as-Sadiq. And in reality, there are many more contributions of the Imam that I can go to, but sometimes, you know, it becomes information overload if you keep going and going time and time again. Because these are those Imams. That the reality of those Imams is that connection they had with Allah, that connection they had with Rasulullah. You know, after they allowed for hadith to be written again, Imam al-Baqir, he comes upon the mimbar. He says, Qala Rasulullah. They say to Imam al-Baqir, that once again, same statement, they say towards him, you never saw Rasulullah. How can you say, Qala Rasulullah? What is your sanad? What is your chain? Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, he says, I'll tell you my chain one time. After this, I'll never tell you my chain again. He says, whatever I hear from my father Zainul Abidin. Whatever he hears is from his father Imam al-Hussein. Whatever he hears is either from his brother or his father. And whatever Amir al-Mu'mineen heard was from Rasulullah. And Rasulullah, وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. That Rasulullah didn't speak from his desires. Whatever he spoke was of the revelation of Allah. These are those And it's this Imam Jafar as-Sadiq that there is a narration of the Imam which particularly it hurts the heart when he speaks. You see, the Imam, all of the Imams had a deep connection with Imam al-Hussein. You know, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, when he was upon his deathbed, he told Imam as-Sadiq that whenever you go towards Mina upon Hajj, do the azah of my grandfather Sayyidul Shuhada. That do the azah of Sayyidul Shuhada. Why? Because at Mina, you find the Muslims from all over the world, they gather. In Mina, when you hear Labbaika Ya Hussein, when you hear the name of Imam al-Hussein, it is one of the best spots to spread the message of Sayyidul Shuhada. Do the azadari at Mina is what Imam as-Sadiq was told. But you know, there was one wound in Imam as-Sadiq and in each of the Imams. And that wound was the wound of their grandmother Zahra. You see, many people have sacrificed themselves in the name of Imamat and Wilayah. Today we see many of the followers of Ahlul Bayt being killed. But you know, the first shaheed in the name of Imama and Wilayah was none other than Fatimatu Zahra. You know, Imam as-Sadiq has a narration, and it's a narration I would think about often. He would say, Al-Bakka'un Khamsa. He would say that those who mourn the most in history are 5. He would say the first is Adam. That why would Adam mourn? Adam, when he was sent away from heaven, he didn't commit a sin. He would mourn from separation. But then when you find when Habil was killed by Qabil, Adam would mourn. Adam, he mourned for 40 years. You know when Adam, he stops mourning? When Jibreel comes to Adam. He says, oh Adam, in your lineage will be Muhammad, the final prophet. That Muhammad will have a grandson by the name name of Hussein, that Hussein will have a son by the name of Ali Akbar. That's when Adam, he stops mourning. Adam was the first of the 5 who mourned the most. Then the Imam says Yusuf, because Yusuf, when he was separated from his father, when he was thrown in the prison, Yusuf would mourn. Then he says the third is Yaqub, that Yaqub, he cried so much that he went blind although his son was alive. The Imam says the fourth is his grandmother Zahra, that he says the fifth is Imam Zainul Abidin. But you know, I have one question. Adam cried for 40 years. Yaqub cried for 60 or 70 years. Yusuf cried for 21 years. Imam Zainul Abidin cried for 35 years. Zahra only mourned for 75 or 95 days. Why was Zahra considered amongst the most who mourned? The Imam, he said, don't look at the duration with which my grandmother Zahra would cry with. Look at that severity and that pain which with Zahra would cry it. You know, sometimes I have to remind myself as well that Zahra was only 18 years old. I ask you, have you ever seen an 18-year-old with her back bent walking with an asa? You know, when Zahra would walk through Medina, she would hold Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein after the death of Rasulullah. The women of Medina, they would say, who is holding the hand of Hassan and Hussein? Who is that old lady? Somebody would reply, it is Zahra. They would say, Zahra is only 18 years old. What has happened to Fatima? What can I say about the musibah of Fatima? You know, Fatima, she would cry day and night. A point comes, they come to Amir al-Mu'mineen. They say, oh Ali, tell Fatima to either cry in the day or cry in the night, not both. You find the Imam, he was forced to ask her. The Imam, he didn't want to ask her, but they made the Imam do this. You find after that they say that we can't handle Zahra crying in Medina. So you know what Zahra would do? She would take Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein. She would go outside of Medina. She would sit under a tree and cry. But a day came that they even cut that tree behind Zahra. That she would sit in the sun and cry with Hassan and Hussein until Amir al-Mu'mineen, he builds that house known as Baytul Huzn. You know, that house of sorrows. What is the pain of Zahra? You know, each of you, you've had a dark moment in your life. You've had sadness in your life. You know, you express your sadness in different ways. Some people, they express it through poetry. You know what Zahra would say as she would sit by the grave of her father? She would say, Subbat alayya masaibun, lo anna subbat ala al-ayami, lo anna subbat ala al-ayami sirna layaliha. She says that musibah befell me, that if that musibah it befell the brightest of days, they would turn into the darkest of nights. I say, oh Zahra, what musibah befell you? A time had come where they gather outside of the door of Fatima. Zahra says, this is the house which Rasulullah used to come to. This is the house where Hassan and Hussein used to be. You find they say, we don't care. They burn the door. They push the door upon Zahra. In between the door and the wall was Zahra. Zahra says, Fizza ilayki. Fizza Mohsen has become shaheed. You know, there was a companion. There was a companion of Ahlul Bayt by the name of Salim. Salim, he wasn't in Medina at that time. Salim, when he says to Salman, he says, oh Salman, is it true that they burnt the door to the house of Zahra? Salman, he says, not only is this true, Salman, he says, Zahra went behind the door. There was a nail within the door. When they pushed that door, the nail went into the rib of Zahra. You know, Ayatollah Wahid Khurasani, he would say something strange. He would say that imagine that your finger, it breaks. When your finger, it breaks, you find it causes you pain, but the finger is different. Now imagine a broken rib for 95 days. But I say, oh Agha, I say, oh Sheikh, there is a difference between the finger and the bone of the rib. The finger, at least you can hold it still so the pain goes away. But when it's a broken rib, every time you breathe, that pain it causes you. That's why they said to one marja, is it true after the door fell on Fatima that Fatima couldn't turn towards the left side when she would sleep? He said it's not that she couldn't turn towards the left side, she couldn't turn towards either side. Amir al-Mu'mineen would lift Zahra. The wound of Zahra, you are hearing the Masaib of Zahra and it breaks you. Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, with his eyes he saw what happened to Zahra. 40 years had passed since the murder of his mother. You find one day, as he's walking through Medina, the narrations they differ. Either it was Marghwan or Mughira, they come in front of the Imam. The Imam, he turns his face away. They say to the Imam that, why did you do this? The Imam says, every time I look at his face, I remember that moment when they burnt the door to my mother. My mother was behind the door. Marwan, he came. He hit my mother across. He hit my mother across the head. That this is what happened towards Zahra. But you find Zahra, she's within her final moments. She says to Ayman, oh Ayman, I'm going in towards my room, oh Ayman. Oh Ayman, I'm going to recite the Quran. The moment you hear the Quran stop, know that Zahra is no more. Then she says, oh Ayman, when Hassan and Hussein come towards the house, make sure you give food to Hassan and Hussein before you tell them what happened towards their mother. Zahra goes into the room. She starts reciting the Quran. The point it comes when the recital of the Quran was no more. Ayman says, Assalamu alayki ya Zahra. Assalamu alayki ya binti Rasulullah. You find Zahra doesn't reply. You find Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, they come towards the home. They're looking for their mother. Ayman, she says to Imam al-Hussein that eat food first. Imam al-Hussein says, oh Ayman, when have you known Hussein to eat without his mother Zahra? This is that musibah. I'm not going to recite the entire musibah. You find that moment it comes. Zahra had given her final wasiyah towards Amir al-Mu'mineen. She said, Ya Ali kafinni bil-layl. She said, Ya Ali, put the kafan at night, bury me at night, do my salat al-janaza at night. You find Amir al-Mu'mineen as he's giving ghusl towards Zahra. A point comes where Ali begins to cry. Ali, he falls on the ground. They say, Ya Ali, that why are you crying like this? The Imam, he replies by saying that Zahra never told me that her rib had become broken in such a way. My hand, it went across that broken rib. You find the janaza was taken at night. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he takes that janaza towards that grave. He looks into the grave. He says, Ya Rasulullah, I'm returning your amana to Rasulullah. But oh Rasulullah, when you gave her towards me, she was Salim Rasulullah. Now her rib is broken. Now her rib is broken. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he buries Zahra. He spends the night at the grave. When moment comes, the Imam, he falls asleep at the grave. When he falls asleep, he sees Zahra within his dreams. Zahra, she says, oh Ali, return towards the house. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, oh Zahra, don't you want me to stay here by the grave? Zahra says, Ya Ali, I want you to stay. But oh Ali, Zainab and Kulthum, they have just woken in the house. They're looking where their mother. على لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين. I know it's not easy to listen to the musibah of Zahra. It wasn't easy for Amir al-Mu'mineen either. Two men, they were walking by. They were saying to each other that what is the hardest moment in a man's life? One of them says that it's when a man he gets sick and he can't provide for his children. The other he replies by saying it's when that man he doesn't have that family around him. They say, Ya Ali, what is the most difficult moment in a man's life? Amir al-Mu'mineen, he puts his head down, he begins to cry. He says the most difficult moment is when the husband is like Ali and the wife is like Zahra. They come to attack the wife, but the husband can't do anything at that moment. You know, when something happens to their mother, they go towards the father. When something happens to the father, they go towards the mother. I use the wasila of Imam Hassan, Imam Hussain, that when Zahra was in between the door and the wall, where would they go? For on the other side, the rope was put on the neck of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Ya Allah, we ask through the right of Imam Hassan, Imam Hussain. You know, many of our ulama, they've written that when you ask through the right of the broken rib of Zahra, that Allah, He doesn't reject that wasila. We ask through the right of the broken rib of Zahra. I know many people, they've asked to make dua for their health, that they're sick and ailing. They're going through family difficulties. They're going through difficulties within the community, physical, spiritual. Wherever the followers of Ahlul Bayt are facing trials, help them. Ya Allah, protect those Zaireen who are returning to their homes, that they went by foot towards Karbala. Now they're going by foot towards their homes, as well as all of the Zaireen. Give us the opportunity to go on the ziyarah of Ahlul Bayt, particularly the ziyarah within Karbala. You know, everywhere you go to ziyarah, right? When you go to Najaf, you see that there is light over there. There is gold on the mausoleum. People, they bring candles towards the grave in Kadmain and Karbala. But what about that lonely grave in Jannatul Baqi? That broken grave that there's not even a candle upon that grave. Ya Allah, grant us the ziyarah of Jannatul Baqi. And very soon allow us to see the day when that Jannatul Baqi is rebuilt. And Ya Allah, we pray for the hastening of the reappearance of the master of our time, Matam Hussein.
बेटा है तू अली का, ज़हरा की तू दुआ है, शबीर तेरा आका उम्मुल बनीन माँ है। हर सूरत व चलन में हैदर से ना जुदा है, ता हश्र तुझसे क़ायम दुनिया में बस वफ़ा है। अबा सबा 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 तेरे अलम को थामे हर शख्स कह रहा है, मज़लूम करबला का ज़ैनब का वास्ता है। परदेसी कोई ऐसा परदेस में न उजरे, सदक़े में उसके जिसका घर बार लट गया है। अबा सबा 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 उस वक्त जब के ज़ैनब दरबार में गई थी, क़ारी नमाजियों से महफ़िल सजी हुई थी। ज़ालिम ये पूछता था गाज़ी तेरा कहाँ है, बालों से मुँह छुपाए ज़ैनब ये कह रही थी अबा सबा सबा तकदीर के सताए तेरे दर पे सर झुकाए अशकों की इल्तिजा हम गाजी तुझे सुनाए बीमार सारे बांके जख्मों का वास्ता है जितने भी खस्ता दिल है मौला शिफा व पाए अबा सबा शाम गरीबा में जिस का कुर्ता जल गया है कानों से बालियाँ भी हाय शिमर ले गया है इस बेबसी से मौला बची कोई न तरसे फर्शे अज़ा पे रोकर हर दिल ये कह रहा है अब सबा 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 सबा
या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन हुसैन
अम्मा फिजा बता दे मुझको पत्थर क्यों आ रहे हैं
अम्मा फिजा बता दे मुझको पत्थर क्यों आ रहे हैं
कैसा है ये चरागा दिल डूबे जा रहे हैं क्या शाम आ गया
है अम्मा फिजा बता दे मुझको पत्थर क्यों आ रहे हैं फिजा बता दे मुझको पत्थर क्यों आ रहे हैं
होने लगी अजाने कैसे सरों को ढांपे बाजू बंधे हुए हैं रो रही हैं आंखें आँखों के हूँ से रास्ते हूँ में नहा रहे हैं
क्या शाम आ गया है अम्मा फिजा बता दे मुझको पत्थर क्यों आ रहे हैं
होने लगी
बता दे मुझको पत्थर क्यों आ रहे हैं
होने लगी अजाने कैसे सरों को ढांपे बाजू बंधे हुए हैं रो रही हैं आँखें आँखों के हूँ से रास्ते हूँ में नहा रहे हैं
क्या शाम आ गया है अम्मा फिजा बता दे मुझको पत्थर क्यों आ रहे हैं या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन
आराम कहाँ हाय आराम कहाँ आराम कहाँ हाय आराम कहाँ दश्ते आलम में ज़ैनब को भला आराम कहाँ हाय आराम कहाँ दश्ते आला में ज़ैनब को भला आराम हाय हाय आराम कहाँ। कत्ल शबीर भी अब्बास भी अकबर भी हुए, कट गए औन मोहम्मद के भी मकतल में गले। लाशे इब्ने हसन हो गया पामाल जफा, आराम कहाँ या राम कहाँ है आराम कहाँ। तीनों में ज़ैनब को भला आराम कहाँ है आराम कहाँ है। तीर जब असगर मासूम की गर्दन पे लगा, देती थी खैमे के दर पे खरी बानों ये सदा। बिन तेरे चैन मिले कैसे मुझको को महला का, आराम कहाँ है आराम कहाँ है आराम। चिर गई मश्क सकीना लब दरिया अफसोस, बेकफन खाक पे है शेर का लाशा अफसोस। प्यासे बच्चों का कोई चाहने वाला ना रहा, आराम है आराम है। दश्ते आला में ज़ैनब को भला आराम छिन गई सरसिरदा जल गया साब तमाम। बादशाह बीर नामादार हुई कैसे ये शाम, खुना खानों से बहा बची का दामन भी जला। आराम कहाँ है आराम कहाँ है। दश्ते आला में ज़ैनब को भला आराम
अस्सलामु अलैका या रसूलल्लाह खातमुन नबिय्यीन, अस्सलामु अलैका या अमीरुल मुअमिनीन व वसीयु रसूल रब्बिल आलमीन, अस्सलामु अलैकी या फातिमता सय्यदतुन निसाइल आलमीन, अस्सलामु अलैका या हसन इब्न अलीयुल मुज्तबा नासिहुल अमीन, अस्सलामु अलैका या अबा अब्दुल्लाह, अस्सलामु अलल हुसैन व अला अली इब्नुल हुसैन व अला औलादिल हुसैन व अला अस्हाबिल हुसैन। अस्सलामु अलैकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू। अस्सलामु अलैका या गरीबल गुरबा, अस्सलामु अलैका या मुईन अज़्ज़ुअफ़ा वल फ़ुक़रा, अस्सलामु अलैका या शम्स शमूस अनीस अन्नुफूस अय्युहल मदफून बिअर्ज़ तूज़। अस्सलामु अलैकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू। अस्सलामु अलैका या मौला या साहिब अज़्ज़मान, अस्सलामु अलैका या शरीकल क़ुरआन, अस्सलामु अलैका या कअबतल ईमान। अज्जलल्लाहु तआला फरजक वसहलल्लाहु तआला मखरजक वज़हूरक वजअलना मिन अवानिक व अंसारिक वल्मुस्तशहीदीन बैन यदै। अस्सलामु अलैकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू।